All right. Good morning, folks. Looks like we are all set for coffee chats. I don't know about you all, but I had the very special treat of a Zoom reboot. So I am joining you right after my reboot. We have some special guests here, but first and foremost, I want to thank you all for joining us again for another Coffee Chats with Economic Alliance Snohomish County. My name is Gary Clark, President and CEO of Economic Alliance, and we are extremely excited about today's conversation. As you can see, we are talking about something that is very important and critical to not only our workforce, but our opportunity and quality of life for our families. And so with us today, we have some special guests. We have Paige Coleman, who is the program manager of family-friendly workplaces, Washington State Department of Commerce. Paige, thank you for joining us this morning. We also have Susan Mink, who is the human resources expert, consultant for the family-friendly workplaces with First World Group. Susan, thank you so much for joining us again today. I like your background. It is a cool, and I think you actually have First Rule in the back there on the screen.
Yes, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And then last but definitely not least is Ben Robinson, is the finance expert consultant for family-friendly workplaces with First Rule Group. Ben, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Awesome. Well, folks, I know there have been some survey questions that have been asked to the group. First and foremost, before we dive in, I'd like to ask that each of you who have joined us today, that you put in the chat what organization you're with, why is this topic specifically important to you, and don't forget to put your level of interest with this topic. So again, I want to thank you all for joining us today. So let's start off just hearing quickly a little bit about each of you, if that's okay, and why is this important to you, if that's cool. So Paige, you were first on my list, so would you be willing to just give a quick intro to yourself?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Paige Coleman. I'm the program manager for family-friendly workplaces, and that program started out as employer-supported childcare technical assistance program, and I'd be happy to share a little bit more about that during the presentation. But I am happy to be working with the Washington State Department of Commerce on this program. It's new, and there's a long-standing commitment to this work from Commerce. I'm happy to be joined by two consultants with First Rule Group. And Susan, I'll ask you to introduce yourself next. Thank you.
Thanks, Paige. I'm Susan Mink, and I am on the project offering my human resources background to employers. I have worked in human resources for over 30 years. I have an MBA. I've been in a leadership capacity for over 20 of those years, primarily in the healthcare space and nonprofit organizations. I'm really excited to be on this project. I am a parent. I have two kids, and while they are adults at this point, I clearly remember the struggles trying to find childcare even back then, and I know it is more difficult now. As a human resources professional, I'm aware of the challenges our employees have, and so this is something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm very excited to be here today. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And Ben?
Yeah, I am Ben Robinson. Thank you again for having us. I have about 20 years experience in financial management, executive leadership. I also have two daughters. They are 10 and 12. So went through the childcare issues. I'm in the middle of sort of the middle school childcare. You're kind of between independence, but outside of childcare. So just very aware of the impacts on me as an individual, but also the impacts of how it works within a business, and then trying to staff and schedule, handling all the needs of the staff. Again, very, very happy to be here.
All right, thank you. And I just want to quickly highlight a few notes here, specifically in Snohomish County before we go into the presentation. childcare, as you all know who are on screen, this remains a top priority in Snohomish County, with 80% of Snohomish County residents living in an extreme childcare desert. That means that there are no options for these families to find places for their children to locate. Snohomish County, though, recently highlighted and announced that it's awarding $7.6 million to 6 capital projects aimed at increasing affordable childcare across the county. So this is a great opportunity. It is used and tied to the ARPA fund, which is the American Rescue Plan Act. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Paige and the crew.
Thank you. I'm going to quickly share our screen here. Okay, hopefully you can see our first slide of our presentation this morning. I'm very happy to be here. And as I mentioned, the program that we are all collaborating on was started out as employer-supported childcare technical assistance program. And then after hearing feedback from business networks and employers, we changed that name to be family-friendly workplaces. And we'll go through that in this presentation. Oh, let's see, that was different. Okay, so for commerce, we have a wide variety of programs that really mirrors what is happening in communities around Washington State. And I invite you to think about these different areas in your community, and that childcare is a part of each of these. So we consider childcare embedded in not only workforce issues, but also see it as a business issue as well. So as I go through these animations, truly childcare is an issue of all parts of these industries and areas of our society. Today's focus will start with continuing the conversation that you were bringing up, Gary, on what's happening with Snohomish. We have some metrics to share with you and want to test to see what you think about that information that we share. And then we'll go over the family-friendly strategies for employers, tangible solutions that our team has developed over the past year, as well as to share with you the support for strategy selection and implementation. We'll reserve some time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. And now I'm going to hand this over to Ben to start with the community context.
Yeah, thank you, Paige. Continuing a little bit on what Gary had said, a theme through all of this is every employer exists in a context. And so just starting at the high level, because as we've gone around the state, we hear a lot of different views on sort of how things are going on a local basis. So we try to start with just some high level and just see if this resonates with people. So this one here is just the number of employed persons in Snohomish County. And this is taken from the Federal Reserve Bank. So this is very depersonal, very high level. And at least here it shows, there's more people employed now in the month of May than there were pre-pandemic. So the idea of that doesn't mean it's easy to hire people, but it does suggest the issue isn't necessarily that people haven't come back to the workforce yet. They might have come back in different ways. The demographics might be different. So I'm going to pause there. Does that sort of resonate with people? You can give thumbs up, or does it sound right that there are as many or more workers now as there were before? So we'll jump on, and feel free to throw questions into the chat as we go through this. So again, start there. There are as many workers in the workforce. If you can jump to the next slide, Paige. So there's another data point that's provided by the state that looks at supply and demand in the workforce. Here we go. And again, this comes from ESD. And what this looks at is the orange line there is the total number of job postings. The green and blue are, or the green is new postings, orange is total, and the blue is supply. And supply here is the number of individuals coming off of unemployment. So this is just trying to get a sense of like, is it easier, harder? Is supply higher, demand for employment? And you'll notice in May, a pretty significant uptick in total job postings. So this data suggests, again, it's not getting any easier to hire people. So as we have been trying to find employees, try to retain employees, this data suggests, it's not getting any easier and might very well be getting slightly more difficult. And again, does that resonate, sound? People still having challenges hiring and retaining? So then we segue to sort of our topic here is sort of part of what all of this is childcare. And I know Gary touched on this earlier. We also checked in with Childcare Aware right before this meeting. Susan had a brief conversation. And Snohomish County looks similar to the rest of the state in that there's actually more capacity now than there were before, but flat or slightly less in childcare providers. And what that suggests is more larger childcare facilities with more inflexible hours and fewer of the family, friends, and neighbor childcare that can handle some of the overnight childcare, off-hour childcare, ad hoc childcare. So slightly more capacity, but not quite as flexible for people who might need it. So again, mixed here, there's not a whole lot more, and childcare is still a challenge. That I'm assuming that resonates with people, general theme. So again, we like to lead with these just to set context, because that'll be a theme as we go through it. So if you want to jump to the next slide page. And this I segue back to you, I think.
That's true. Thank you. We thank you for filling out the poll. I think that was on your screen when you first joined. And Rachel, I just have a question for you. Do you have polling results that you'd like to share with us now from the first poll? And if you do, we'd love to see it. If not, I can go through this slide.
So it looks like for the first poll, are you losing employees or coworkers due to childcare related reasons? 9% said yes, 26% said no, and 65% said not sure.
Thank you very much. It's so helpful to hear. And what we find is that sometimes employers are not aware that employees are leaving because of childcare issues. And so we have some suggestions to find out and be able to start to understand how important that is for your current workforce or those that may have moved on. So in speaking about the program here, I wanted to just share that a little bit more. The program was started as a result of the Child Care Collaborative Task Force that was started from Senator Reeves' suggestion on the House floor to bring together a diverse group of stakeholders, including employers. And over 5 years, they created annual reports and recommendations. In one of their reports, they included a recommendation. It was actually called the Child Care Access Strategy Report. They included the recommendation for this program to consider the role and support that employers would benefit from when it comes to the childcare issues in our communities. So after we started the program, we held listening sessions for employers and business networks. And through that, we learned that many employers in Washington state already include family-friendly policies and practices in their business. Yet many of them may not realize that they're doing so and identify their policies and practices as such. Similarly, we learned that the greatest interests and needs from employers is around the areas of HR and finance expertise. And that's why we added First Row Group to our team to be able to provide that expertise. And we're so grateful for their participation. So we've been partnering with the Association of Washington Businesses, many economic development agencies, chambers of commerce, and the Child Care Aware of Washington, Department of Youth, Children, Youth and Families, DCYF, and many others. It's really amazing how much childcare is connected to many of our agencies and organizations and businesses. So through this, we've developed tangible solutions for employers to consider for their workforce recruitment and retention, and offer these technical assistance consultations at no cost to employers to be able to tap into as they think about what does their workforce need and what solutions may they incorporate more so into their business. We've developed return on investment online tools and also fact sheets for these different strategies that employers may consider. And finally, we're one of 3 childcare related programs at Commerce. I will say that right now there are funding opportunities for both of these other 2 programs that you can see on your screen. The Child Care Partnership Grants and Early Learning Facilities Program both have open funding opportunities that I encourage you to take a look at. The deadlines are both this month of August 2023, so please take a look. And then Ben, I think I hand it over to you.
Let me rapidly unmute myself. So yeah, as we dive into the strategies, one question that always comes up is what's the return on investment? Why are we doing this? And it really boils down to recruitment and retention. That is where the ROI is for much of this work. Because it's expensive when staff leave, it can be very hard to hire people. And as we've just gone through, childcare is a big component of that. So that's what all of this is kind of focused on. It does mean it can be a little tough. You know, why employees leave and why they stay isn't always clear cut. It's a mix of things. So as we go through sort of the ROI conversations, it's rarely a clean and easy, it is 7%, it is 8%. It's in the mix. The other thing to keep in mind is there's solutions for businesses of all sizes. Many of what we propose is actually much easier for small businesses because it's only 5, 6, 7 employees. It's a lot easier to sort of assess how can we serve 7 or 8 people as opposed to 800. So keep in mind, these are not just for large or medium-sized businesses. And the other thing we try to really emphasize as much as we can is this is all about incremental changes. Is if we can make employees' lives a little easier than it is right now, that's a step in the right direction. It doesn't have to be 100% solution. So incremental changes in just emphasis of what you're already doing can sometimes have a big impact. You can jump to the next slide really quick. And so along those lines, we try to center people in sort of, why are we talking about childcare? Because that comes up frequently as, I'm an employer, I'm a business, childcare is something else. And what we try to emphasize here is it's very similar to lots of other things employers are doing, particularly around healthcare. So employers make a strategic decision about, am I going to provide healthcare? Am I not? The state has a backup, which is Apple Health or Medicaid, and many people can qualify for it, or there's the health exchange. And as you kind of think through the benefits that employers provide, many of them have a public component to it. Think about tuition reimbursement or educational funds. Think about some of the mental health support, employee assistance programs. So many of those have a corollary on the public side, except for childcare. So as we get to childcare, it's part of what employees need to be successful and productive, but there is no other public backstop for it. So it forces employers to engage slightly differently. And so the next slide, here are the 19 strategies that we have identified. There's no magic solution here. I mean, it does take work, and we'll kind of walk through what that work might look like. But there are roughly 19, and depending on how you want to slice them, these are the ways in which you engage in the childcare conversation. So as you're having discussions about health benefits, about tuition reimbursement, retirement. Childcare is just one of those. And these 19 are a way to jump into that conversation and make a decision about how do we engage in sort of childcare support. And I think we now segue to Susan.
Yeah, thanks, Ben.
Sure.
So Ben mentioned that we've identified 19 strategies. We've taken the 19 strategies and categorized them into 5 buckets, for lack of a better term. The first bucket is information referral. And this is basically a continuum. These 5 buckets represent a continuum of consideration as it relates to time investment on the part of the employer, as well as financial expense or financial investment. This first bucket, information referral, would be those strategies that would take the least amount of time, commitment, or expense. Let's go to the next category is flexible schedules. So, and you can see how we have grouped like strategies in these categories. And then we have financial contributions, flexible benefits, and on the far right, we have a category of childcare, which would contain those strategies, as you can see, that would probably, will take the most time commitment and the greatest investment on the part of employers. So we are going to do a bit of a deeper dive in a few of these strategies to give you a better understanding of the information that's available on our website. The first category we thought would be helpful to take a quick look at is information sharing. As Ben said, many of these strategies are things that any employer can really do, and in some ways may already be doing, but perhaps hasn't formalized it. With information sharing, this item on the left here is the document and information that's available for this strategy when you drill into it on our website. And you can see at the top, we have the cost and time continuum, with this being the least cost and the least time intensive strategy. This strategy is really suggesting to employers that employers make information available to employees at the worksite on childcare topics. Linked at the bottom of the document are a number of resources that can easily be pulled down and printed and posted for employees who are interested. The first item on the right, Childcare Aware of Washington, as many of you may already be aware, has a resource tool that allows people to search for available childcare in their area, and allows them to do that search based on whether they need full-time care or part-time care, or whether or not they need extended hours or weekend care. So this is a really great tool that, again, provides access and information on not only child care centers, but also family, friends, and neighbors care that is licensed. Available in this document is a link to Working Connections child care subsidies. So again, this is another flyer that is easily printed and provides information to employees about subsidies that may be available to them through the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. And another item linked to this page is the Early Childhood Education and Assistance Program, which provides information on the state's pre-kindergarten resources. And lastly, there is a link also to family, friend, and neighbor care for more information about that option. This is, oh, well, at any rate, I was just going to add that this family, friend, and neighbor care is a great consideration and allows grandparents, aunts, uncles, elders, and neighbors to become more of a formal provider of childcare. One of the next strategies that we wanted to highlight is around partnerships. Partnerships are a really important aspect of addressing childcare across the state. Oftentimes, employers are considering the need for perhaps on-site childcare. And as we've identified in our continuum, and as I'm sure you already know, that is one of the most time-intensive and costly strategies for increasing childcare. However, if you're able to partner with other organizations, such as many of the ones that are on this call today, it can really accelerate and be more effective in the way of identifying possible childcare new centers and options. We have a couple of different grant opportunities that we wanted to highlight here that you may already be aware of. The Child Care Partnership Grant application is due at the end of August. And there's a Community Capital Facilities Early Learning Program grant that has a grant deadline of August 22nd. One of the other strategies in the child care category is securing slots at an existing child care center. And we did work with a healthcare organization in Eastern Washington that was considering their ability to establish a child care center. And when we met with them, their need was really a concern around being able to have childcare available to new providers that they were trying to recruit to the area. And so we suggested that they consider this particular strategy either through a child care center or through a family, friends, and neighbors care home. And this was an avenue that I think really hit the need at the particular time for this organization. And this can take several different forms. It can be an agreement with a child care provider that gives first opportunity to employees in a particular organization, or the organization may actually prepay for slots to try to ensure that staff have access to care. So again, these are just a couple of strategies, and not every strategy is going to be something that works for every organization. And as Ben said earlier, these are incremental changes in this kind of big issue of childcare access and increasing childcare availability. Okay, can we go to the next slide? The last strategy that we wanted to touch on, just as an example, is the workplace culture strategy. And again, this is not a strategy that requires a lot of expense, but it does require a little bit more time on the part of an employer. And one of the things that we wanted to underscore was the importance of culture as it relates to family-friendly employers. It would be unfortunate for an employer to take the time and the investment in some of these strategies, but maybe not have an authentic way of presenting itself to employees. And what I mean by that is, if an employee feels apprehensive in requesting the time that they might need and have available to them to address dependent care issues, then having the benefit really isn't that helpful. We would encourage employers to coach and or provide training to especially first-line supervisors around strategies that are available to employees to help address childcare concerns, and how to help them connect to those strategies or benefits, and how to be supportive of employees. And a part of this is also, again, making sure that all employees are aware of what's available to them. They might not need it right now, but they may need it in the future. So again, this strategy is all about how to really promote a culture of a family-friendly culture in the workplace. And lastly, what I wanted to share with you is that on our website, we also have developed 3 ROI tools to help employers really navigate these strategies to help determine what strategies they might want to start with, maybe determine, help them determine which ones they already might be using, but perhaps maybe not formalize and may be able to expand. Really helps you identify what the investment might be for the various strategies, and again, the scale of that investment. And again, all 3 work together to help an employer identify the top strategies for your organization at this particular point in time. And we don't have time to demo one of these for you today, but consider this a bit of a teaser to encourage you to maybe access our website and take a look at them for yourself, or engage us in a consultation. And on that note, I will pass it on to Paige.
Great. Thank you so much, Ben and Susan. We're kind of wrapping up for our presentation. I just wanted to highlight a little bit of a few points. That many employers of all sizes and industries do have family-friendly workplace policies and practices, and that we encourage a review of what the business is offering in their benefits or compensation packages, and consider the usage rate and how visible is that to your workforce, either your current workforce or those that you're recruiting. And also to consider the workforce needs in the community context. What are the assets in your community and the needs relative to childcare? And of course, please feel free to tap into the tangible solutions on our website. You're also welcome to reach out to us for an initial consultation. We could find up to an hour to be able to visit with you virtually, hear a little bit about what your challenges are, and go through the ROI tools together. I think that's could be a very valuable use of your time if you're interested. And then finally, there's a growing resource of business professionals for community initiatives. So to really look outside, not only within the Economic Alliance of Snohomish County and your networks and membership, but also in your more local area. So again, consider us for a consultation. There's a QR code that you can use to sign up, and we'd be happy to entertain some questions.
All right, thank you, Paige, Susan, and Ben. Those are excellent stats, information, programs, resources, and opportunities. Folks, I'd like to highlight that we will open this up for some questions through chat. We'll ask some initial questions that we have listed, and then try our best to get to your questions and make sure that the panel has an opportunity to see some of those. So if you'd like to go ahead and start to ask questions in the chat, Rachel and I will be tracking those, and then we will try our best to get there. So first and foremost, though, let's dive into some questions that we have listed here to engage on. And the first one is tied to focusing on our employers. So where should employers start in implementing these strategies that you've suggested? Where should they begin?
Well,
Who would
this
like-
season, I will start out responding to that question. We really think that what an employer might want to do first is to really take the time and opportunity to assess what they might already be doing. Because again, we found that more often than not, informally, organizations have already made some of these, implemented some of these strategies and many may not be aware of it. So first, really try to inventory what you're already doing, and then, have a discussion or consider what level of time and or investment that you might be willing to make, which would really help kind of guide what options to consider going forward.
Any other thoughts on that from the group? All right, seeing none. We have another question. This is focused on gauging the necessary needs and preferences. So can you suggest ways that employers may be able to do that, gauge specific needs, preferences for their employees regarding childcare options, to know which of these strategies may be best for their business? How do we figure out what's best for my business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And we've talked a lot about that. And practically, what we are finding is that if employers and human resources staff are have a strong connection with their workforce, that they probably have anecdotal information and feedback from supervisors and maybe even employees themselves about what they're struggling with and what their challenges are. And those are important pieces of information to pay attention to. Obviously, we oftentimes want to jump to doing a survey. Well, let's survey the staff to try to determine, what exactly we might want to think about. And while that's always an option, the thing that I'm always concerned about is whether or not the employer is ready to respond to the information that they get. So if you're not quite sure, you may not want to directly ask those questions because, there's nothing worse than doing a survey and then not being able to really follow up. But so that would be the only thing that I would, be concerned about relative to that. Obviously, also many employers conduct employee satisfaction or engagement surveys, and you might be able to mine, comments from that as well that might help provide additional information. But typically those the actual questions don't get into this level of detail, but the comments might be also a helpful resource. I guess also one of the strategies that we have in the information sharing category is around introducing an employee resource group if your organization doesn't already have one. And again, that can be a very low cost strategy, but can be a more of a time commitment. But employee resource groups, if you actually already have one, depending on the nature of the topic of the group, is probably also a really good way to obtain information. Starting a group around childcare or maybe more broadly dependent care would be a great way to, again, get feedback, comments, and suggestions from your employees on this topic.
Okay. So now I'm a business and I'm thinking, okay, I'm ready to provide childcare support. But now I know as a business, there's always some red tape somewhere. So are there some regulatory issues or legal issues that businesses need to consider?
I think I'm point on this one, and the short answer is yes, because there always is. The longer answer is there aren't necessarily new things because it is childcare. So the exception here is if you open your own childcare facility, clearly lots of additional red tape. That is a licensed industry. Short of that, the only thing we encourage everyone to think of is childcare can touch on many different protected classes. So just have that in your mind. You're already thinking of that. But as you're thinking about surveying people, you wouldn't survey your own staff and ask, who has cancer, who has a family member. Those are the sort of things you just want to have in the back of your mind. So yes, want to learn what your staff need, but just be cognizant of there are a lot of protected classes in this area.
All right. So tied into this is, and I'm a big incentives guy. Are there tax incentives available to employers who offer employer supported childcare services? So to the employers.
Yeah, the short answer is yes, but they're rarely enough to sort of tilt the decision process. So at the federal level, there's an IRS form, it's 8882. So that is an opportunity at the federal level to get some amount of tax credit for supporting childcare. There are very specific requirements. The highest amount is 25%. There's another category that qualifies at 10%. It's capped at 150,000. So it's helpful, but it's rarely the decision. It's it wasn't going to break even till I got this, but it can help. If you make that decision, you can go down that road. Lots of these strategies also reduce taxable wages for staff. So it's kind of a corollary benefit is some of those other taxes can go down slightly. To your point, it's not enough to change a go, no-go decision. But if you've made the decision of this is important to our organization, this is going to have positive ROI, this can tweak that ROI.
Okay, Ben, so you kind of hit on my next question, which is how should these strategies integrate with existing benefits and work policies?
I think Susan's going to take the lead on this one.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think we all agree that they shouldn't stand alone. Really, again, you need to understand what you're already offering, and it may be that you consider expanding on what you're already doing. So in other words, instead of talking about childcare, maybe it's around dependent care or dependent support. Again, we really stress that not everybody might need childcare at this particular point in time, but they might need it in the future, depending on their family situation. They might have dependent care needs in the future, and maybe kind of have that more global lens around the topic. And so again, we wouldn't want to necessarily call this out on its own. It really does need to be woven in with policies and practices as a healthy workplace, an employer-friendly workplace.
Okay, I appreciate that. Well, Susan and panel, what steps can employers take to ensure inclusivity and accommodate diverse culture or religious preferences related to childcare?
Well, I kind of touched on this under the culture strategy. I really can't underscore enough how important the role of the supervisor is in the organization in really setting the tone and the foundation for this whole topic for employees. And, if you want to be viewed as a family-friendly organization, I think it goes without saying that it starts at the top, with the leaders kind of walking the talk, for lack of a better term, and making sure that, they're taking the time to meet the needs of their family, that they're demonstrating that it's okay to recognize and support the whole individual. One of the things that we kind of like to talk about is the reminder that when you hire someone, you're basically hiring the whole family. They may not be in the workplace, but employees have their whole family in mind throughout the workday and are responsible, to whatever degree for that family unit. And so anything that the employer can do to recognize that circumstance is really going to go a long way. And to do that equitably. In other words, it's not just this one department that we're supporting, but that we're recognizing that this is a need across the organization. How we provide that support may look a little bit differently because we know that not everybody has an office job. And so, there are some limitations in that flexibility, but the important aspect is that, that we're authentic. And one of the things that we try to call out is just recognizing, for example, what your school district's calendar is. Just the employer having the sensitivity to say, gosh, we see that this is another early release day. What can we do to try to maybe relook at our schedule just to be sensitive, knowing that parents and our employees, may need a little bit of allowance on this particular day. And again, to say that isn't a costly strategy or idea, that's naive. Obviously, there may be some costs, but it is something that is just a sensitivity piece on the part of employers, just as an example.
Excellent. Go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to add one thing, particularly when you're thinking about childcare, it can evolve quickly and it can have ad hoc needs. So kind of running through all of this is like, if you're a new parent or guardian, that phase only lasts a few months. Then infant care only lasts, a year or two. And so as you're thinking about this, that's a little different than other benefits. Like healthcare benefits, you normally need kind of a steady state amount of healthcare over the lifetime. But childcare just is a little different. So as you're just thinking about all of these, even if childcare is available, they might be sick. They might have to go home early. Things emerge, and don't overinvest in infant care because you have one staff member, because that won't last long. So just kind of a theme through all of this.
Oh, Ben, that's critical. I mean, all of us have been in this space, or at least I assume many of us have been, where there's just emergencies, there's changes, challenges, mishaps, and we definitely need our employers to be very nimble in that space, but we also need our programs to support that ability to be nimble. So I appreciate that. We do have some comments in the chat I just want to get to really quickly. First one is from our amazing Snohomish STEM and Career Connect Northwest Director, Alyssa Jackson, who mentions, can you expand on examples of small or medium businesses working collaboratively to develop innovative childcare solutions? So what are some more examples of how we do that collaboration to get things done?
I think any one of the three of us could respond. Paige, you want to go? You want me to go?
Sure, I'd be happy to start, and then feel free to add. I will say that for our program, it's fairly early stage. We have been working with businesses of all sizes, and we had an opportunity to meet with American Paper Converting and understand what their solutions are and what they're considering to add into their business as well. We do have a short video. It's a 3-minute video that I see it's in the chat. So feel free to take a look at that. The owner, Lydia Work, who founded the company, is very thoughtful about being a parent, and she actually started the company when she had 2 children, and is sensitive to the needs of her employees. And I think is just a very approachable. So I think it speaks a lot to the workplace culture. It means a lot to the employees and that relationship, whether it be the supervisor or the owner of the company. Also included in the chat is a longer video with Dick's Drive-In, talking about their scholarship fund, and they are a little bit larger, but they have a scholarship fund available for all employees to take advantage of. Some do, some don't, but it can extend to childcare as well. So it speaks to that equity issue that you were asking about, Gary, and that Susan was mentioning. As long as it's available, then it's fair and equitable to all employees. And so those are two great examples to take a moment to watch the video. I did have a chance to meet with a small retail store in the San Juans, and they were asking me, well, are any of the solutions available to us? They assumed that it was for larger businesses. And through that conversation, I was asking them, well, tell me a little bit more about how you operate. And they just started describing how flexible they are and supportive of their workforce, a small retail shop, and that understanding that someone might have to leave early due to childcare needs was embedded in their relationships and understanding. So I think some of these strategies may already be incorporated, especially for the smaller businesses. It also brings up how important community partnerships are. For a small business, if they tap into a local childcare provider, and especially the family, friends, and neighbor network, they might be able to have a relationship for when a childcare issue comes up, either a little bit more longstanding or a need for backup care. Those are a couple of thoughts that come to mind. Ben and Susan, are there other things that you'd like to add?
Oh, Ben, you're muted.
Now I'm not. Sorry about that. I was just going to rattle off a few other just concrete examples. Cle Elum is an example where multiple people kind of raised their hand and said, we need childcare. And one said, I have some money, and some said, I have a grant writer, and others said, I have some space. And then they went and identified a childcare provider who was interested in expanding, but needed some of those other assets. So that's an example of just kind of a puzzle slowly assembling as people raise their hands. Going back to what the investment is, that involves time. I mean, it involves picking up the phone, calling people you might not have called before, calling an economic development agency, calling a chamber of commerce. That's a little different, doesn't have to be money. Example is down in Raymond. The Raymond School District built a facility and then realized pandemic changed the economics of it. Now we have a great space. Now we need something else. So they're in the middle of assembling. Dayton is another example of the healthcare provider in Dayton sort of said, we need childcare. Let's start working together. So they're a little bit earlier in the process, but those are three communities around the state specifically doing that kind of, let's all pool together and see what we can get done.
All right. I have a few more questions in the chat, so I want to make sure I get to them before we run out of time. We have just a few minutes left, and I want you all to be able to recap. Our awesome connection to the Toledo tribes and Quilceda Village is Marilyn Sheldon, who mentions or has a question about using SurveyMonkey as a viable means to an end to get information for supporting your employees. Any thoughts on that being an option that works?
Absolutely. I mean, SurveyMonkey is a great tool for being able to solicit feedback from employees, and I've used it myself. My only caution was just when you ask these types of questions, you really need to be prepared and committed to have some kind of a follow-up. So again, just kind of be careful what you ask for. But yes, it is a great tool, and there is appropriate times to use it, and it's great.
Okay, I'm going to get to one more question in the chat, and then one final question on my page. Again, Alyssa Jackson, Sonoma STEM, CC Northwest. I want to make sure that you all check out Sonoma STEM. At any rate, there is a mention on here. Susan, can you mention a strategy around this prepaying childcare spots? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, again, that can take different forms. An employer can, have a dialogue and a discussion with a child care center or organization And, prepay, let's just say I, want to pay for 2 slots at this center, so that I can be sure that, maybe new employees coming to the area have access to childcare. Or they may approach the child care center and say, we'd really like to develop a relationship with you. We'd like to maybe offset the cost of childcare. Are you willing, to, work with us if we have employees who are at your facility, in kind of a cost sharing type of thing. I also had a conversation with, one of the experts at Childcare Aware yesterday, who was saying that another great strategy along these lines is an employer working with family, friends, and neighbors, childcare homes to secure childcare spaces, and or working with the area to actually try to establish new family, friends, and neighbors licensed care, because their perspective is that that's actually a more flexible and viable way to increase capacity. But the challenges are that small independent licensed providers like that need some startup costs. And it's hard for them to have those startup costs, could be as little as $5,000. And then there's also the anxiousness around starting a new business. And will I really have, people that will be, coming right away to secure my revenue stream? So an employer that can provide a little bit of startup costs, or maybe augment a current provider with some costs in order to expand their capacity, coupled with securing 2 or 3 or more spots that really guarantees that revenue stream for that provider, is kind of a great win-win for both organizations. So that's just some examples.
All right. So I'm going to take that back and say I'm going to give each of you, as if we were political candidates here, about 30 seconds to give some closing remarks. And I'm going to start with Ben and move to Paige and then close with Susan.
I think I would just close with, employers should get credit with what they're already doing. Frequently what we hear is employees perceive it as, well, I didn't know that applied to me. I didn't know I could ask for that benefit because I have a child or because I have a care need. So I think I would just close with that first step of assessing what you're already doing and how it could benefit people can have a pretty big impact.
Okay, thank you, Ben.
Thank you. What I would add to that is that it really does take a village. The perspective is that employers play a role in the issues around childcare, and that there are some tangible solutions that employers can do and may already be doing, as we've talked about. And then to look outside of the walls of your business and see what's happening in the community. There's some great organizations, some of them on this call. And I would highlight that Childcare Aware of Washington has regional partners to be able to talk with, and they may be able to help connect to a local childcare provider of some type. So, and we're also available to be able to be a resource for employers to think through the solutions as we shared. Thank you so much, Gary.
Thank you very much, Paige. And Susan.
Well, I know that we're, at 9:30, so I would just say that this is a very important topic. As Paige says, it takes a village. I think this is a great step in being able to share with you the resources that we have available. So I would encourage you to access that code that was in the chat. Give us a call and set up an opportunity for Ben and or myself to work with you on how we might be able to help facilitate this for your organization.
All right. Well, again, we'd like to thank our panelists for joining us, amazing experts. So Paige, Ben, Susan, thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to hear from you all on a very important topic. Also, for those of you who registered for today's coffee chat installation via Eventbrite, you'll receive something in your inbox that highlights the resources that were discussed today. And now I get the distinct pleasure to announce to you that summer networking is coming up August 24th, and that is being presented to you by Alaska Airlines and the Boeing Company. And it will be at the Edmonds Waterfront Center from 4 to 7 p.m. And you can see that there's a QR here to scan here to RSVP. We're gonna have food, drinks, games, and a raffle. And I'm telling you, if Alaska Airlines is involved, there might be an amazing raffle item that might take you all over the globe. So with that being said, we want to thank you all for joining us here. Please don't miss the opportunity to join us. We also have just one more item. I want to make sure that you're aware that on Wednesday, September 27th, we will have from 9:30 to 11 the Healthcare Summit. And this is going to be navigating challenges and opportunities in the changing landscape of healthcare. This is presented to you by our return investor, the Everett Clinic, part of the Optum Group. And so again, you can hit the QR there. And if you want to show up in scrubs just to be a part of the ambiance there, please do. But again, it's September 27th. You don't want to miss this. We need to focus on healthcare. We need to focus on the jobs and opportunities there. And it's going to be at the Everett Community College, Henry M. Jackson Conference Center. Now, folks, I know what you all have been waiting for. Those of you who have stayed on screen, please go to gallery if you haven't. Come on screen. And if you have any type of morning beverage with you, please hold those cups up. We want to thank our special behind the scenes host, which is Rachel Maria. We want to thank the rest of our team and all of you business owners and partners who joined us, and especially Ben, Paige, and Susan. Amazing coffee chat salute. Have a great day, folks. Take care.
Bye.